legislation and laws in place with a lot of senators and delegates down in Annapolis, and really looking at juvenile injustice from a preventative perspective. So the first book that I co-authored, I actually co-authored in 3 anthologies. The first one is called A Christian Woman's Guide for Personal Success. I wrote a chapter on how to deal with death and grief. And that came from my healing process. And actually the chapter started from a poem that I wrote called A Mother's Pain. And that came from one night when I was sitting at my kitchen table and I couldn't stop crying. God just said, go pick up a pen. And it's kind of like he put me in a trance. I don't even know what I was writing until after it was already done. And I said, wow. And from that, this lady, Linda Eastman, has an organization called Professional Women's Network, which I had been a part of since 2001. And she just happened to call me, not knowing my circumstance and where I was at and what happened with my son, and gave me the opportunity to have a chapter in her book. And at the time, I had no clue what I was going to write about. So as we had a discussion, she said, why don't you write about what you're going through? And at that time, I still didn't know. So when I got the poem, it kind of helped me start to journal what I was going through. And I thank God that I did. Because I'm telling you, if you don't know the pain, and I don't want anybody in this room to ever experience of losing a child, you will never understand my pain. And I thank God for just allowing me to have some time to meditate on just Him. Because I couldn't make it. I would not be where I am today first without God. Second, without my son, who helped me to become who I am in my purpose. Because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and what God called me to do. Because everybody can't do it, and even those who try to perpetrate and imitate what I do, they can't never do it like me. So from that led me to, what we call working with at-risk youth. I call them youth with potential, because they only at risk because we put them at risk. So I challenge people, you're not going to keep talking about my baby, talking about what he is, what he ain't going to be. I'm going to tell you what he can achieve, because I set my level of expectations very, very high for our children. So that led me to another book called Women as Leaders, and I wrote a chapter on leadership skills for youth. And in that chapter, I talk about how sometimes we, as adults, we mess stuff up with children. Because we all up in trying to help fix stuff. But guess what? Give them some initiative and let them work it out for themselves. You go take a back seat and they're going to be all right. And that will also decrease some of the violence that we have. Because we need to start teaching our children how to talk, how to communicate with one another. Instead of picking up a gun or a knife and try to harm one another physically. Also, by the words, he was talking about how words can cut with a knife. So you can cut with a knife in those words, but at the same time, you still got to come back, you got to heal, and that's where the compassion comes in. So that led me to my third book that I co-authored in, which is Raising African American Boys. And you all need to be picking this up, and I'm quite sure if you don't need it, somebody that you know does. Because in this chapter, I give strategies and techniques on how we need to be raising our sons for today's environment. We got to go back and use some of the old basic techniques. And we also have to raise the level of expectation for our sons. I got a 14-year-old daughter, and she needs to marry somebody. She needs to marry a man. But she can't marry a man, and he's still in your basement. I don't want my daughter to marry a man who's still living in the basement. He needs it. And when you talk about your father, I just lost my dad in June. He was my best friend. And when you got a good daddy, you got a treasure. We talk about mothers, but when you got a good daddy, I'm going to tell you something, that's priceless. You're right. And I want my daughter to have the same kind of father, husband, mentor that my daddy was. So in Raising African American Boys, I have a section talking about mentoring and manning up. If you, little boys transitioning into men, and I learned this from my son. God, thank you, Jesus. I have 2 sons. But my son that passed away, he was wise before his time. And the stuff that he said to me then that I didn't understand, but I understand it now. He used to tell me, Mommy, you don't understand what it's like to be a black man in Baltimore City and trying to just come and define himself. And I would call what I call my male mentors, and I would say, help me, help me. I don't know what he's talking about. He's saying crazy stuff. And they're like, chill out, calm down. He's just trying to find his manhood. gotta regress, shut up, check ourselves. So we gotta have boundaries too. Okay? And so when I talk about mentoring and manning up, is that the mentor for the child, it ain't for you to try to go on a date with them. So I'm using words of healing in different ways because a part of healing is being truthful. Yeah. And we got to get to the truth and how we raising our children, male and female. But I'm really concerned about the males because men they want to protect. But somehow we have lost that. We have lost young boys. I should be trying to teach a young male how to tie a tie. Even though I know